Hi guys, I want to talk to you about how to factor some expressions. I'm going to start at the very beginning as far as I can tell. I'm going to give you an expression in factored form. This is in factored form because the whole thing is being multiplied. Here's an expression that's not in factored form. Right? This whole thing is not being multiplied, so it's not in factored form. Factored form could be anything like a times b. It could be 3 times x plus 2. It could be x plus 3 times x plus 4 times abc to the 5th. It's even when you multiply numbers like 4 times 0 times 5. Those are all examples of factored form. Things aren't in factored form when you have part of the expression that's not being multiplied by itself or by the rest of the expression. So like 5 plus 6 plus x, 3 plus x, that's not factored form. X plus 2 plus x plus 2, not factored form. Notice the entire expression isn't being added over here, or isn't being multiplied, whereas over here the entire expression is being multiplied. So these are going to be all of our examples of factored form. Okay, well, how do we turn expressions into factored form? It's a really, really useful skill in algebra to be able to take an equation that's not in factored form and turn it into one that is in factored form. So I'm going to try and show you what are some ways that we can do that. The first way that we're going to learn for factoring is called factoring out the greatest common factor. So I'm just going to say GCF. And let's say you had an expression like x squared plus 3x. So this isn't in factored form, right? The whole thing's not being multiplied. But I could turn it into factored form by finding the greatest common factor of the terms. Let's say it's x. And then writing the expression with the greatest common factor factored out, x plus 3. Notice that the factored form of the equation, so that's in factored form, is equivalent to the original equation, right? If I distribute it here, I'd get x squared plus 3x. So that's kind of how I can check my work, if I factored it correctly. Here's another example of a place where you could factor out the greatest common factor. Let's try this expression, 4x plus 8. Can you think to yourself what the greatest common factor would be? Hopefully you're thinking that 4 goes into 4x and 8. So if I factor it out, I get x plus 2, and that's the factored form. I can check my answer by distributing 4x plus 8. I know I got it. This one's kind of trickier. Watch this, 4x plus 4. How would I factor that? Well, again, look for the greatest common factor, 4. Well, if I take 4 out of 4x, I know I'm left with x. But if I were to write that as my only answer, when I distribute it, I only get 4x. I don't get 4x plus 4. So that's wrong. I'm going to try taking 4 out, because I know that 4 goes into 4x and 4. But this time, when I leave x, I need something that when I multiply by 4 gives me positive 4. It's going to be x plus 1. These ones sometimes get people hung up, and if you don't check your answer, sometimes you'll make this mistake. You really want to avoid that, because if you're turning an expression into something that's not equal to it, you'll get all sorts of wrong answers. I can check this. 4 times x, I get 4x. 4 times 1, I get 4. So I know my answer is right. That's the factored form. Okay, that's our factoring out the greatest common factor strategy, and this is kind of the easiest way to look at it. Let's do two harder problems. I'm going to do 1 is 2x squared plus 8x plus 22. We'll make a y. Plus 66 y squared. Okay. Well, I have more than 2 terms here, but I can see that there's a greatest common factor in them. And the greatest common factor across all of these terms is 2. What am I left with? Well, 2 times x squared is 2x squared, plus 4x, 2 times 4x is 8x, plus 11y, plus 33y squared. And that expression is in factored form. I have 2 factors, right? 2 and this big expression. And I don't think I can factor these ones out any more than they are, even though it looks like I could factor this part and this part. I'm going to leave it like that. Here's another example. 2x plus 4. And here you should be thinking there are 2 factors. There's this one, or there's 2 terms, sorry, this and this. These terms have a greatest common factor. They both have x plus 3. So I'm going to factor out x plus 3 from this term and from this term. And I'd be left with 2x plus 4. That's the factored form of this expression. Okay, that's how to factor by finding the greatest common factor. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to factor some trinomials using a different strategy and then using a combination of this strategy and another strategy.